Hey, so the other day I finally watched the newest Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and I was pleasantly surprised when in the post-credit scene this badass new version of Groot appeared. When I saw him I thought, yep, I want that in my collection, so I grabbed a bunch of Polymer Clay and made this. And today I'm gonna show you how I made it. Now, as with all the figures I've made, I'm gonna start by drawing a guide that's gonna help me to keep the proportions under control, and by following these lines we're gonna make the armature. Now let's put a bit of epoxy here and here to keep the armature in one piece, one last piece of wire for the neck here, and let's give him some volume with aluminum foil. Now I'll put him in this improvised temporary base, let's give him a cool pose, and with that I'll start to add a bunch of clay until I have the main shape of the body. No details, no texture, right now I just want to have the main shape of the body, without the hands and the head because those things have complex shapes and it is easier to make them separately. I'm also gonna check the proportions every now and then just to make sure that everything is fine, and once all the clay is in place it should look like this. Okay, now Groot is like Shrek, and I'm not talking about how charismatic they are, I'm talking about the fact that they have layers. Okay, so for example, look at this. So we have some details here, and on top of that we have these things here, and on top of that we have these other things here. Okay, you get the point. So I'm gonna start by making the details of the inner layers first, and then all these outer planks for last. Now, while working on the feet, I noticed that my super sculpty base didn't have enough space to properly make them. I mean, look at them, they are thick, and that only leaves me with one option. Even though there's a lot of pieces like twigs, vines, branches and stuff, Groot is not that difficult to make, or at least in comparison to other figures I've made like Ultron or Jinx. That's because making something look smooth and clean is more difficult than making something look full of texture. Well, it also depends on what kind of texture, but bark texture is easy. Like, for example, with Groot I can make this. Oh, it doesn't look 100% smooth. Well, it doesn't matter. It's Groot. Nobody will notice, so it is just a case of putting or carving a worm on some place, making it look like a vine or something, and then give it some texture. Something that I like to do to give it more depth is to give it some texture. And now the first layer of his body is almost finished. We just need to give it more texture here and here and here and here and here and here. Okay, and now we can add a bit of texture here and here and here, and finally it is time to give some texture here. And this is how the first layer should look. But before working on the next layer, let's make the head. For the head I'm going to start by making a traditional head shaped thing, this, and then I'm gonna carve the mouth and the eye sockets. Now, I'll be honest, Groot's head is pretty easy to make, and this is not me being like, oh, this is so easy, this is a baby sculpture, I'm so good. I mean, I'm pretty good at sculpting, that's why some specialized media consider me as the absolute king of art. But yeah, Groot's head is pretty easy to make. No nose, no skin texture, no ears. So if you're not as experienced as me, I think that Groot is a pretty good character to start with. Now, while looking at reference photos, I noticed that these things are not supposed to be like this. They have like a more round look, which was easy to fix. Now he just needs more texture on the face, and after many delicate strokes with this tiny ass needle, this is the result. So let's put the head in place, and now we just need to make the details of the outer layer, and this one consists of mainly a bunch of planks slapped on, like this one and this one and this one. So for each one of these I'm just gonna grab a bit of clay, shape it after one of those planks, give it some texture and put it in place. When I'm working on one of these sculptures, I like to be as accurate as possible to what the character looks on screen. Sadly, we don't have a clear look of what he looks like on the back. I tried to contact James Gunn to see if he could send me some photos of this Groot's back, and the only thing I got was complete silence. F you. So because I didn't have any reference for this, I decided to copy the back from this Groot. It may not be 100% accurate, but I don't care and you shouldn't either. Okay, and this is how the body should look. And now let's make the hands. You may have already noticed these wires poking through, those are for this. And now I just need to blend the seams and give them some texture. Groot has some thin vines here and there, so I made a bunch of thin wormy dillies, gave them some texture, put him on his body, and with all these vines in place, I can finally bake him. Unfortunately, I noticed that he was too tall for the oven, so I decided to put him laying down. Of course, I couldn't put him directly on this platform because the back would be ruined, so I made these little supports with some wire, and yep, now he has holes on his legs and back, but my plan is to cover them once he's out of the oven. For now, let's bake him and hope for the best. So apparently the neck wire wasn't enough to support the weight of the head, and it ended up breaking and face planted on this side. Now I could have resculpted the whole head, but I'm too lazy for that shit, so I decided to remove the damage to resculpt this part. Fortunately, as the absolute king of art, this wasn't difficult for me, so once the head was fixed, I baked it one more time and stuck it in place with the help of some epoxy. As epoxy is also a clay type material, it was perfect to blend the seams. And as I said before, I also used it to cover those holes. Looking at this image, I noticed that he has a bunch of growths sticking out. At this point, I just wanted to finish these sculptures, so I just inserted some needles here and there, and with the help of a bit of super glue and air dry clay, I made them look like set growths. They are not hyper realistic, but they're decent enough. And with that, we're done sculpting, so let's paint him. Because Groot's general tone is pretty much the same from head to toe or head to root, I'll start by applying a light brown as a base tone all over his body until he looks like this. Then I'll follow that with a dark brown wash, and I'll put a bit more in the crevices to accentuate the shadows. Because I gave him a bit of texture here, 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 and here, the paint had a great surface to adhere. And I'll be honest, now with the shading it's starting to look way better than I had expected, but we're not done yet. We still need to apply a dry brush. This time I'll go with a slightly lighter brown. Now looking at these images, I wasn't able to spot any moss, and I say this because the other versions of Groot had it here and there, but I decided to give it a bit of green anyways. I think it makes it look just a bit more interesting. Now I just need to paint his eyes, then I'll give him a coat of matte spray paint sealer all over his body, then I'll go back to the eyes to give them a good coat of gloss varnish, and that's it! Okay, as always, let me know what you think in the comments, please leave a like and subscribe and all that. Okay, that's it, bye!